Time to do a little this and that with HSRP. A couple of things I want to show you, and the first one is changing the timers. Frankly, you can leave the HSRP timers alone, and I don't think the overhead is terrible. But if you really need to change these or need to change them on the exam, you certainly need to know how. What I've done since the last video is just I took all the old configs off, and the only thing I've put back on is the standby 5 IP command. That's it. So we're looking at all defaults here. And on switch 1, we're looking at a hello time of 3 seconds and a hold time of 10 seconds. And we can change that. Let's see how. I bet you can guess where we start by this point, certainly. And we go standby 5, and we're going to use the timers option for hello and hold timers. Now, we can set the hello interval in seconds from 1 to 254. You can specify the hello interval in milliseconds. That's pretty retentive, and you're talking to a retentive guy. that's pretty deep. You really don't need to go that far with it to do it in milliseconds. What I would do here, let's say we want to double that, and then you've got to enter a hold time, even if you're going to keep the 10-second hold time. Notice that we do not have a CR here, so you've got to put it there. We'll go with 15 seconds here, just pulling a rabbit out of my hat. So standby 5, timer 6:15 means we've reset our timers to 6 seconds for the hello time and 15 seconds for the hold time. Now, you'll note the only message we received from the console was configured from console by console. We didn't get any HSRP related messages. And you might have thought we'd get one because I haven't changed the timers on switch 2. They're at the default. Timers don't have to match between routers in an HSRP group. I strongly recommend, and Cisco also recommends, that you do keep them the same on all your routers. So the thing is, you don't want to get it out of whack to where you've got a hold time somewhere of 10 seconds, the default, and on another router you set your hello timers to 12 seconds. Then you're going to end up with some issues. So I would just keep my timers consistent. Changing them, not a big deal. Now you know how. Let's take a look at authentication. A couple of options here I want to show you. And the first one, well, let's go ahead and bring up that standby 5. And we've got authentication right here at the top. And I'm not even going to show you plain text authentication, because if you're using plain text authentication, shame on you. You really should be using MD5, and I realize that Cisco router MD5, by their own admission, is not the hardest thing in the world to crack, but it beats the over-the-shoulder network attack where somebody just looks over your shoulder, sees what your password is, and comes back later. So we're going to use the MD5 option here, not MD6, and we've got key chain and key string. And when you're looking at these two right next to each other and maybe haven't used them, it's like, well, what's the difference? Well, we're going to use a key string first. And a key string is just a fancy way of saying I'm going to enter a password. Maybe. There we go. And we're just going to put the password in here. We're not going to paste anything. We're not going to use that 0 or 7. And what we're going to do is just put CCNP right there with no null space. Watch that. And that's it. So now you'll notice we're getting a bad authentication from 172.16.23.2. That, of course, is because we haven't gone over there and set authentication up yet. So that can happen. What I did want to show you while we're over here was something in the config. Now, I set this to MD5 authentication, but is that password of CCNP going to show up in the config itself? Could have done a filter all the way to the bottom, but that's okay. Yeah, it's right there under Interface VLAN 100. It's just sitting there. Now, what can I do to encrypt that? That's your first clue. There's a service I could use here. I love it when I remember to put the hyphen in. Service password encryption. That's an old CCNA friend of ours. And I'm going to use that right there. And you can see now I've got a key string with a lot of numbers that someone cannot look over my shoulder and say, oh, okay, the password is 03277825536. Doesn't work that way. Now let's go over to router 2 and set up authentication here. And it's just standby, then the group number, then authentication. And we're going to use MD5, of course, and a key string, and then CCNP. And then we will wait, and hopefully everything will be beautiful. See, state is active. Last state change was 9:13 ago, so let's keep that rolling. You see right here in the middle, Authentication MD5, and it says you're running a key string, but it doesn't say which one. And this can take a little bit of time. Active router is local, so we've gone back to where we were, where active router is local, standby is .1. And we'll just go over to that one and make absolutely sure. And there you go. So that's authentication right there. Now that's with a key string, a key chain. I'm going to show you how to configure one of these in case you haven't seen one before. And it's a little tricky at first. You have key chain. Might be trickier than I thought. There we go. Keychain without the hyphen in the middle. So I love this. You know, it's keychain name here with the hyphen. When you get to the command, it's gone. So I do that quite often. A keychain, then it's what you're calling your chain. Your chain can really be thought of, you know, the way I've always remembered it, like a key ring. You got a key ring, and you've got a key to your house, and you've got a key to your car, and you've got a key to your office, and maybe some other keys you don't want to tell anybody about, and that's all cool with me. But the thing is, that's what a keychain really is. It's a series of keys. And what you do here, you create one. And what I would do here is just create one with one password right now. That's what I'm going to do. So let's just put I'm going to call it HSRP, just so I can look at it later and say, oh, okay, that's what it was. Then you have to give it a key. Your first key is given a key number. So I'm just going to say, okay, key 1 is CCNP. Now I do have some other options here. You see accept lifetime and send lifetime. That's another reason you get into keychains, because I know especially when you start using it's like, man, this is ridiculously complicated. Why don't I just use a password and I'll change the password if I ever want to. You can do that, but if you want to for other features, so you're going to use keychains for security features, you're going to use them, I believe, over in the routing course, the MP routing course as well, for other features. And what you'll want to do sometimes is say, okay, this key is good from this Monday to this Thursday, and then that's it. So, or you could do the send lifetime, you know, how often you can, you know, the valid range when you can be sent. So it really can be helpful when time gets involved. If this is a one-time only password, I'm probably going to go ahead and use the string myself. But what I will do instead is set key string, and here's where the actual password is. And that's it. And if I want to create another key string while I'm here, I would call it key 2 and go forward from there. Again, I know this looks a lot more complicated than just setting a password. And again, for authentication for something like this, for HSRP, personally, I'm probably just going to go ahead and set a simple key string. But for other features that you're going to run into in the future, especially if they're time related, these keychains really, really come in handy. Then what you would need to do is learn how to spell exit. Then what you would need to do is go under here. If you were using that keychain, MD5, keychain, and then you give it the word name of the key chain, not the key string that you put in. So here, I wouldn't put CCNP. What I would put here would be HSRP, the name of the keychain I just created. Again, first time you use keychains, you'll trip over it a little bit. That's no big deal. It's just part of the learning process. But it will come to you. And again, just going to mention it one more time. For time-related passwords, this is the way to go with keychains. That wraps up our time with HSRP. And you are, as you move to the next video, about to have the biggest case of deja vu in the history of network certification training. Because the next protocol we look at, VRRP, is going to look so much and feel so much like HSRP that you're going to wonder why we're even looking at it. But there are important reasons. First off, there are some important differences. Secondly, it is going to be on the test. And third, VRRP is our industry standard protocol, where HSRP is Cisco proprietary. So go ahead and take a quick break. I'll see you in the next video, and we'll start with the Virtual Router Redundancy Protocol, VRRP.